We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are MZgeneration.
Bringing news just for you. It's Thursday, August 20th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is MZgeneration. Joining us today is Cheska.
Happy Thursday, everyone!
Happy Thursday! And also Wonbing's with us.
Hello, good to be here.
Good to have you. Both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're one step closer to the end of the work week. The weekend is finally within reach, and for many that means making plans, going out, maybe even making time for romance. So today we're taking a closer look at dating, what makes it appealing and what might make some people choose to focus their attention elsewhere. So while some people are looking forward to a weekend date, others might have completely different priorities. So Jessica, let's find out how you feel about this. Well, are you interested in dating these days or not?
So you're definitely the quote-unquote the other that you mentioned, the other who has priorities. So let me describe it like this. So whenever the friends sort of like get together and the topic of our coffee talk suddenly switches to dating, I go almost silent. Like I'm the one that's like crickets while everyone is participating. So just to clarify, it's not so much that I don't want to date. I'm very open to it. But I think I'm not as interested or invested because I don't really have much to say or contribute. And I think it's because right now my life priorities sort of set differently. Yes, dating is important, but not something I put effort into consciously. And whenever I see happy couples on the street, I go like, oh, that's so cute. But then immediately I'm thinking about, okay, what work do I have to do? What are some home duties? You know, other priorities come into my life,
Yeah, I think that a lot of people could relate to that because I think these days there's a lot of people who are focused on building their careers, especially people in our age. So I do see that happening. What about you, Woman? Are you interested in dating or other people's dating lives?
Well, similar to Cheska, at the moment I'm not in a relationship, but it's not because I can't. It's by choice.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's by choice. I'm not in a relationship.
You're emphasizing it too much.
Okay, intentionally. Okay, because for me, for now, I just prefer to enjoy the freedom of the single life over the joy that I would get from a relationship. And as a freelancer, my timetable is very flexible compared to other regular office workers. And especially it's really tough for me because for me, I'm usually busy between 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., which is usually when the office workers are the most available. Therefore, in my previous relationships, I did have some hiccups about the amount of time we spent together. So for now, I'm single. Again, emphasis on by choice.
By choice,
Yes.
I see. So
I think you're trying very hard.
we believe you, we got you.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. One of the more personal questions we've all been asked at some point is, are you seeing someone? But as the economy changes and social values and expectations evolve, dating seems to be becoming less of a priority for many people. Today on MZgeneration, we take a closer look at the numbers behind the decline in interest in dating, why more young people are becoming less interested in relationships, and how society's attitudes toward dating are changing. Just as we saw in a video, dating appears to be becoming less of a priority for many young people, particularly in Korea. And this isn't just a feeling. Recent surveys show that just how widespread this shift has become. So, Cheska, can you tell us how many young people say they're not interested in dating?
So actually the numbers might surprise you because I actually regarded Korea as sort of like a very couple positive.
Right, it's commonly thought of when you walk down the streets of Korea. Like a lot of foreign tourists who come here say it's hard to walk down the street without seeing a couple.
That's exactly what I thought when I first came, and there's so many like promotions or events that you can participate if you're a couple.
True.
So I was actually quite surprised too, but interestingly, a recent survey of young people across 5 countries found that 55% of Korean young respondents said they were not interested in dating, which was actually the highest among the 5 countries.
Wow.
So let's actually take a look at the screen to see the numbers. So Korea was at its highest at 55%, as you can see, very closely followed by Japan 54, and then drops to 36 from the US. So I think it's very interesting that the top 2 countries are actually Asian countries.
Right.
And there was also a clear gender gap. So 61% of Korean women said they weren't interested in dating, compared with just under 50, about 48 of men.
That is also interesting.
It is interesting, right? As we'll talk more about it. And apparently economic circumstances also seem to play a role. So those who are unemployed or in lower income groups were more likely to say they had little interest in dating. And this kind of makes sense because we're all young, but young people sort of have to manage their own finances and kind of figure their lives out. So it seems to be a combination of multiple factors that could lead to a diminishing interest in dating for a lot of young people.
Right, so it's interesting to see that in numbers, and it suggests that this isn't simply about people having fewer opportunities to date, but about dating itself becoming less of a priority. And the trend becomes even more interesting when we look at what's driving and who is feeling this way the most. So how does a lack of interest in dating been growing over time, or is it something more sudden?
Right, so this trend has been going on for a few years now. If we look back in 2022, a survey by the Korea Population Health and Welfare Association showed that 66% of young people weren't in a relationship, and 70% of the ones who answered that they weren't in a relationship, they said it was because they simply didn't want to, again, just by choice. And even in a dating consultant survey, over 70% said they weren't dating, and the main reason for that was just lack of interest or just not willing to start a relationship.
It's quite interesting. So this isn't, I guess, a new phenomenon. So we've been seeing the same pattern for several years now, with many young people saying they're single not because they can't find someone, but because they simply don't feel just the need to date anymore. So why do you think so many young people are becoming so less interested in dating? And this is something apparently it's been going on for a while now.
Yeah, and it was interesting because when Wonbin mentioned the survey, it was simply, the answer was just, I'm not interested. Yeah, I'm just not looking for it. So this might be interesting because when we look at the stats, at its first glance, the numbers may show people's loss of interest in relationship and dating. So we think people want less connection, but actually I think we can dig a little deeper and see a slightly different story. So one is shift in priorities. So I would actually fall into this category too, but simply put, for our previous generation, marriage and family were sort of the important next life steps that you had to take. Now, for us, it's life and careers that actually make people more fulfilled rather than leaving them feeling like they have exhausted a lot of their emotional and physical energy in trying to sort of cultivate or even maintain a relationship. So I think it's a shift in the focus of where we invest our energy by investing into others versus investing into oneself. Now, the other is this very interesting social trend that has earned its name called short socialing. So people still want and crave connection, but now instead of this deep time investing or repetitive commitment, they actually start socializing through activities almost like a short content. But they do it very casually. So it could be like a running crew, or like a fitness activity, or like just taking classes.
It's more hobby-based.
Hobby-based, activity-based. So as you mentioned, the focus is more on the short contact and short activity time rather than having this deep relationship or trying to get to know the person a little bit. So they enjoy it, have connection, and then come back quickly to their lives. So it's kind of interesting because now people are replacing the connection they build with relationship with the kind of connection that they find from these short social activities.
Interesting.
So I guess people are more interested in pursuing or spending time on pursuing their hobbies rather than investing in people itself. And if they need more social interaction, they can get that through these groups.
Exactly, and it works both ways because you're sort of gaining these skills and activities and fun experiences, but at the same time you do have the social connection. So they feel like it's the perfect balance for people who don't want a deeper commitment.
Right, so I guess they won't feel that gap of like wanting to need human to interact, because they are getting that while pursuing their hobby. That's interesting. So that shift toward putting yourself first also seems to be particularly important. And there's so many ways to stay entertained and connected without being in a committed relationship. Dating may no longer feel like something people need in order to feel fulfilled. But it's not just about changing priorities. There are also very practical concerns shaping how young people approach relationships. So this is kind of mentioned before, but how are economic pressures influencing young people's dating choices?
Right, so experts actually point to financial pressure as another major factor. With tough job markets, high inflation, and rising housing prices, not just in Korea, but globally, it's basically almost like a survival instinct at this point to not prioritize finding a relationship. Just taking care of yourself and surviving is already hard enough. So dating just gets pushed aside. It just can't make it to the priority list.
Right.
And moreover, people shy away from dating because it often feels like, especially in Korea or Asia, it often feels like a direct path
That's very true.
to marriage and having kids, which again leads to a ton of financial pressure. And on top of that, the social stigma isn't really there anymore. Like back in the day, if you weren't dating or getting married, people might look down on you, especially as you get older, older from your early or mid 20s.
Like you're not taking the next adult
yeah,
step.
people will see like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But it's just not there anymore. I mean, compared to honestly, I think it's still there. It's not completely gone, but compared to the past, it has improved a lot. So that also contributes for people to having a neutral stance and respecting both who are single and who are in a relationship.
Right, so I agree. I think what's changed the most is the social pressure surrounding dating. And if being single is no longer seen as something you need to, per se, fix, young people may feel much freer to decide for themselves whether a relationship is worth their time, money, and also emotional investment. So we also asked what our viewers thought about this. So on the ID9 News YouTube channel, we asked, if you're not interested in dating, what's the main reason? And here's what the results showed. So nearly half, or 49%, said they would rather focus on their career or self-improvement. Another 28% said they have plenty of other entertainment options, while 23% pointed to the financial burden of dating. So it looks like our viewers largely echoed what we heard today. For many young people, it's less about rejecting romance altogether, and more about having other priorities, from personal growth to simply enjoying life on their own terms. So to learn more, we're going to speak with a young person interested in dating and dating trends from a different country. And that conversation will take place right after break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
We're joined now by Shayla from the US, who's interested in dating trends. So hello, Shayla. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hello.
Hi. So how much emphasis do young people this time in the US? We talked about what it's like in Korea. So what's the emphasis that people place in the US on dating? And as someone who is interested in dating trends, what do you think makes dating appealing to you?
Yeah, so I think that on an individual level, for many young Americans, dating is actually not that important, but because people are focused on their educational goals and their career goals. But I think culturally, a lot of young Americans don't realize how big dating is a part of the culture, because there are so many new online new age dating coaches that are breaking down and analyzing how young people should approach dating or what they should prioritize in their life. And as a person really interested in dating trends, I think it's all interesting how it plays in a role of how young people interact with each other. And for me, it really makes me wonder, how could I talk to a person I'm interested in? How should I dress on this day? Or how should I look? What should I say? And young people are really, really into this nowadays. So I think that's what makes it really appealing.
That's very interesting that there are multiple trends and different ways to approach it. And as you saw in the survey, there is a group of people that are not interested in dating so much. So what are some reasons that young Americans might be choosing to stay single?
Yeah, so I think the survey touched up a little bit on it, but one of the biggest factors are financial stress, because a lot of young people are embarking on their education, but with that, they have a lot of debt. And with the housing prices that are constantly rising, it makes it really hard to prioritize dating. And so people are going through a lot of financial stress. But I also think that with the access of technology, there are so many dating apps these days, and that leads to a lot of selectivity among young people, because you can program these apps to look for what you want. But let's say that you don't exactly find it, and so it makes you a little bit picky. And I think that people are indirectly being single. They want a relationship, but they're not realizing how selective they are being. And of course, a lot of young people are focusing a lot, actually. In America, I see a huge rise of educational endeavors among young women. And so it makes it really hard for them to really pursue anything serious. So a lot of them remain single, unfortunately.
I see. I was very surprised when I heard your insight of people unconsciously being more picky. I think that's a really good insight. It's food for thought for everyone. So last question for you. How has the perception of being single changed among young Americans?
Oh yeah, I want to say for the past 5 to 10 years, maybe 10 years ago, there was a rise of couple social media channels on YouTube and on social media, and that really made people want to be in a relationship because it was a status of like financial stability that everybody wanted to have. But after COVID-19, I think a lot of people went through a lot of personal life issues, and so after that, a lot of young people are not placing that much of an importance on being in a relationship. So being single is much more acceptable. But I also want to say America is a really big country. So depending on what state you come from, whether that's a very religious conservative state or a very liberal state, the dynamics would look very different because religious people really want to go ahead and get married versus if you come from a liberal state, it might be a little bit lenient. And so people won't shame you on, why are you single? You have to get in a relationship. So that's really the fun aspect of it all. It really depends where you come from in the States, your political ideas and your values in life. So it varies very much.
I think that's a really good point because especially like in Western social media, you see obviously the hashtag like trad wives. So I guess that's where where people's like I guess their beliefs can also play into factor to how that can also factor in. But before we let you go, I want to ask you like what does your dating life look like and what is your idea of like ideal man?
Oh, my dating life is a little bit shaky, but not for the reasons people think it might be. I think I'm a very open person. I'm a people person. I love meeting people, but I think people get a little bit intimidated by me. I don't know why. Last year, I had someone propose to me actually, and I rejected it because I'm still getting my college degree. And so it was really awkward. But I wouldn't say I'm really picky. I really value somebody who has the same goals as me, life goals, lifestyle. I really like to stay active, and finding a partner that would want to have the same interests as me could be really fun. So I'm excited to see where it goes. But yeah.
Hopefully we'll have you back to hear more about this. All right, thank you
You.
so much for coming on, Sheila.
Thank you.
Of course, have a good day.
Bye bye.
So we just heard from a young person in the US about how dating is viewed among young Americans, why some choose to stay single, and how attitudes toward being single are changing. So while the trend may look different from country to country, one thing seems to be clear. The way we think about dating and relationship is changing. So, how do you think society's attitudes towards dating has changed over the years?
Right. So, like we just heard in the interview, for example, like for big countries like the States, maybe the culture or the society may be different depending on the state or the region. But in case of Korea, back in the day, there was this strong, like I mentioned earlier, there was this strong idea that dating was an absolute must for young people in order for you to get married and have kids. It was like a pre-decided path. And in a famous Korean song, there's even a song lyrics that says 연애는 필수, 결혼은 선택, which means dating is essential and marriage is optional. So even if you don't result in marriage, you should still date someone and continuously see people to enjoy life. But the perspective is now changing a bit more neutral. Like we heard in the interview, people are being more lenient about your relationship status. And moreover, on top of that, like Jessica mentioned earlier, there are many other hobbies that allows you to stay occupied rather than being in a relationship, like running crews, other sports, or any other crews or any other hobbies. Yeah.
So it's interesting that dating was once seen almost as a necessity for young people, while today being single is increasingly seen simply as another lifestyle choice. And of course, dating can still bring plenty of benefits, from companionship to emotional support and simply just having someone to share experiences with. But that shift also means people may feel less comfortable making assumptions about someone's relationship status or even asking about it. So have you noticed people becoming more respectful of people's choice to stay single when they're talking about relationships?
I think I'm seeing it more in Korea as well, because as Wonbin mentioned, I think nowadays asking for your relationship status isn't always like a friendly, like a casual question.
Right.
Because back in the days, I think people sort of use that as a way to sort of ice break or get to know the person a little bit more. But now I think it's becoming more private and respected. And I think you can still politely ask, if you're dating someone, but I think it's the follow-up question that always kind of gets people.
True.
Because if you're single, I think always the follow-up question is, oh, what's the problem?
Why aren't you dating?
Why aren't you dating?
What is going on?
Exactly. It's okay. You'll find someone, or like, do you want me to introduce you to someone? So my little trick is when the people ask me, if you're dating or not, if you're single, I say, I'm very happily single, thank you.
That will shut them up. That will do the trick. That's a good
By
different
choice.
variant.
By choice.
By choice.
Fully by choice.
What used to be considered a casual question, are you dating anyone, can now feel much more personal. And I think that reflects a bigger change. People are increasingly being encouraged to define what makes them happy for themselves rather than following a traditional timeline. So perhaps the real question isn't whether young people are interested in dating, but whether dating still has to be considered a must for a fulfilling life. But kind of shifting gears, then are there people you would actually recommend dating for versus people who you think shouldn't date, or it's better for them to stay single?
Gotcha. I would actually phrase it slightly differently and say whatever we gain in relationship, I think we relinquish in singleship. And whatever we enjoy in singleship, we have to let go when we're in a relationship. So I always think of it as somewhat of a very fair trade. It's a matter of whether one should or should not date, but what sort of values are you prioritizing at the moment? And those become your indicators, because there's different type of growth and so much pain that comes from being single versus being in a relationship with someone. So let us choose wisely.
I think that's a very good point. Depends on where you are in your life and what is important to you. So
there's both the pain and the good that comes with anything.
That is true. Very true. Where there's a loss, there's a win. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, for me, I'll answer the question a little bit more directly. If you want a healthy relationship, personally, I think you need a healthy mindset. And I believe that a healthy mindset comes from having a stable life. Now, stable can mean different things depending on who you are and what your situation is. For some, like we discussed, it could be the money or your financial situation. For someone else, it could be your career. And for someone, it could even be what country you're living in. And once you feel stable on your own, that's when you should start looking for a relationship. Because when we start a relationship while we are vulnerable, we tend to kind of heavily depend on the other person. And this, I'm not saying this is bad, and this isn't a bad thing after all, but potentially, if this happens, it could result in worse scars or traumas if the worst case scenario happens. Now, that being said, I'm not saying that you must start a relationship once you get your life figured out, but because the question said, who would I really recommend it to? So if I have to recommend it to someone, it would be people who are in a stable life and who are ready to move on and explore the relationships further and beyond.
I think it's really good advice. I think a lot of people look for people that can fill like the empty void in their lives, but it's better to be a whole person before you meet someone, enter in relationships. And I agree. So dating no longer may be a must for young people, but that doesn't mean romance is disappearing altogether. As priorities and social expectations change, being single is increasingly seen as a choice rather than a status that needs to be changed. So ultimately, whether you choose to stay single or choose to date, what matters is finding a lifestyle that works for you. That brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. My News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. Big thanks to Cheska.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
And also Wonbi.
Thank you for having me.
And to your viewers, thank you so much for watching. And hopefully you're spending your time on someone you love, even if that someone is yourself. We are
News Generation.